Hi, friends. I'm Andy Green, and today we're talking about the struggle to stay sober because this is the Naked Man Podcast. Today's guest is Monica Andrade, a comedian and filmmaker based out of Chicago. Monica met and befriended my partner Lily back in high school. They worked at summer camp together, and while they went to separate colleges in Chicago, they remained in the same social circles. Indeed, Monica is the one who introduced Lily to her ex-boyfriend. Said ex-boyfriend is who inspired Lily's move to Los Angeles. I wouldn't have met her otherwise. So one can make a compelling argument that Monica is the reason Lily and I fell in love. So thank you, Monica. And side note, Monica remains the only person that I've seen Lily sing karaoke with.
That's awesome.
Last year, I reached out to Monica to join me on my Movies with Friends adventure, where we watched my least favorite film of that month, Spike Lee's The Sweet Blood of Jesus. Oops. But in many ways, that was our first stab at our own friendship, at our own connection that has evolved since then through social media. Monica is one of the most vulnerable, honest, and forthcoming friends I know. While most of us only share the fun and the good online, Monica shares everything, the best and the worst of herself. And indeed, that's how I learned that she was struggling with her sobriety. And that's what led to our conversation today. In many ways, the decision to go into recovery to be sober is seen as the end of the story from the outside, but that's obviously not the case. Indeed, it's almost the start of a new story, and it's really hard to write a new story about ourselves. So today, we're going to check in on how it's going. Initially, when we spoke, Monica questioned whether or not she wanted to talk about it, whether she should, because she's not years and years sober. But then we both realized how rare it is to see someone talk about this stage of recovery when they're truly in it. And there's a reason for that. It's scary and difficult, which is why I'm so proud of Monica for being willing to talk this out with me. But I'm also not that surprised because Monica is one of the bravest people I know. So, with all that said, Monica, welcome to the Naked Man Podcast.
Thanks for having me, Andy.
Yeah, of course. You're welcome.
And just like a quick reminder, I use they, them pronouns.
Yes. Did I do her in there?
Yeah.
And I do know that about you. I think I was focused on other things.
No worries.
My apologies.
It's all good.
Yeah. But no, thank you for keeping me accountable. How are you feeling in this moment?
I'm feeling good. I'm just getting over COVID, so I'm feeling like, energized finally, and like I'm coming out of it, and I feel excited to be able to like spend some time outside once I start testing negative again, and a little nervous, I will say, just because even though I am pretty open about my sobriety and recovery online, like I've never sat down to have like, like a full-fledged public conversation about it. So
Yeah, it is definitely like a different vibe. I mean, we're recording, it's like a podcast, it's real. But
yeah.
I mean, I would argue that probably more people see your posts than this podcast, at least at this point. So, but yeah, like I said off mic, that yeah, we're just basically shooting the shit. And welcome back from COVID. I was there in July, and I know in some ways it feels like I still can go back there in that like brain fog, like fatigue way. But it sounds like you avoided the fog and mostly had like a cough.
Yeah, I had like the fever dreams and the body aches and the cold sweats and the migraines, and I slept a lot when I was able. Didn't lose my taste of my sense of taste or smell, so that was good. And I don't think I got like the brain fog really, so I'm pretty lucky in that regard.
Yeah, I think I didn't lose the taste too, and I feel like that would be the most devastating thing to me if that
Yeah.
happened. But for me, I don't know. I mean, you said that you might have had trouble like sleeping through the night, but for me, it was like in some ways nice that it forced me to sleep so much. That was
Mhm.
like the one silver lining. It was like, oh, I needed to like just do nothing for a week.
Yeah.
But maybe you disagree, and that's okay. But yeah, so you said you're nervous, and I guess I wanted to sort of ease into it and ask, well, how many days sober are you at this time, at this moment?
Um, I am 5 days short of a month, so a little over 3 weeks.
Great, awesome, and I mean, I think when we talked, it was like, was it a less than a week or
I
something? It
think
was,
so, yeah.
yeah, yeah. So it was like really, really fresh and raw.
Mhm.
Um, and, and and I guess how do you like? Where do you like? Do you feel kind of that same level of vulnerability or raw? Or I don't know what the right word is, but I mean, I think there was a reticence to talk about it, especially after a week. But do you feel a little bit like what's the difference between a week and a month to you, or like is there a difference?
There is, because honestly, like, when we talked about it, I was like, "I don't even know if I can make it through till tomorrow," and so, like, right now, I'm feeling a lot more, um, stable and, like, okay, like, I feel more, like, in it, and I've gone through this cycle a bunch of times, and so, like, I know logically that the more time that passes, you know, the easier and I don't wanna say it doesn't get easy, it never gets easy, but, like, it gets a little bit more manageable, and the cravings and urges get fewer and farther between. But like a weekend, it's like, oh my God, I'm just like white knuckling, the
Mm,
chair and, trying to make it to the next meeting or the next thing, the next project, the next whatever's going to keep me busy and occupied and on the right track. So right now I'm feeling a lot more resolved in my sobriety. So that's good.
awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, we are recording on a Friday, so we're sort of heading into a white knuckle weekend.
Mhm.
And I understand, because yeah, the weekends, that's party time. That's where it feels like the social thing, and I think that sort of was programmed into us from like, I mean, I guess high school on, but like specifically college for me. But I realize, what if you mind? I don't know if it necessarily will affect the conversation or not, but like what like substances are you like trying to like addicted to or avoiding? Does that, I think
Oh,
that's maybe
all of
helps
them.
our all of them. Okay.
Yeah. So I have a history with like the biggest ones that really fucked me over were heroin, meth, cocaine, and alcohol. Those were the ones that were like I was, but I would put anything, you know, anything that anybody had, anything I could get my hands on, whether it was psychedelics or ketamine or, you know, cocaine, weed, whatever, it doesn't matter.
Right. Okay.
It was just like I just wanted to not I wanted to feel anything other than, what I was feeling. I didn't want to be sober. I just wanted to be like in another state of mind. But yeah, the ones that really did me over were like needle drugs and alcohol. And I have kind of an interesting story with like the way that I've overcome each substance. Like I've kind of quit things in like a staggered timeline. So
Oh, interesting.
yeah, so I actually haven't um done meth or heroin in like uh actually I think last month was 6 years. Yeah.
Oh,
So
that's amazing. Yeah.
thanks.
Yeah.
And then but I was using morphine, so it's like, but yeah, but that I haven't done in like 6 years. And then I haven't drank in like 3.5 years. I haven't smoked weed in like a year and a half. So it's all staggered. And the thing that I was shooting cocaine and morphine pretty heavily. So
Oh.
that's kind of like the last, and it's really just the coke that is like the biggest problem for me. That, and it's weird because I was always more of like a downers person. Um And like when I the first few times I tried coke, I snorted it and it didn't really, I was like, I could take this or leave this, so I never thought it would be a problem. And my baseline is anxious, so I was never really super into stimulants anyways. So it's like
Right.
it's weird that it became such a problem. But yeah, that's the big one that I've just been unable to quit for, like, ever since the first time that I injected it. It was just like I just couldn't put it down.
That's, I mean, I know what you mean about the stimulants, because I think, I don't think when I in college and like shortly after, when I was like binge drinking and blacking out, like, I mean, it was alcohol, but and that was, a salve for anxiety. I didn't know it, so I know what you mean. Like, and cocaine I've never really tried, but I sort of had a sense that that didn't appeal to me because of, yeah, my base anxiety. I wasn't needing energy or like whatever. I just, yeah, it's the same thing. I didn't want to necessarily, I didn't know how to feel just normal, I think, in some way, or how to be. So I definitely like, feel that, and so it's interesting that you like. Is that an? I don't think there's a normal way, but in terms of how you stagger each one, like, do you have in your mind different sober dates for each substance, or is it all sort of overarching a month? You know,
I think I kind of stick, like, my sobriety date is just like whenever I got clean and sober from
right?
everything, but I do still, like, I do still honor the okay, it's been 3.5 years since I last drank alcohol. Like, that is still like in present in my mind of like that timeline. I still um appreciate that time for what it is, because to be honest, like, when I first started trying to get sober, I never thought I didn't actually wanna be sober sober. It was just like, I just wanted to stop shooting up. Like, I just wanted to
Mm,
stop putting, you know, drugs in my veins, and it was like, I just need to stop doing heroin, and that's, like, the big one, and I'll still drink, and I'll still smoke weed. So, like, I never thought that I could live a life without alcohol. Like, there was just, like, there was no, I couldn't even imagine a life without alcohol. So to me, it is a big deal that, like, okay, yeah,
yeah.
maybe I'm not like, I haven't been like fully clean and sober for more than a month, but it is a big fucking deal that I haven't touched alcohol in over 3 years, because I just could never imagine a life without it. And it's everywhere. Like, it's literally, you can get it anywhere and everywhere, and there's ads for it everywhere, and any gathering I go to, it's there. So it's like, if there was like a shop on the corner selling heroin and cocaine, like, until like 2, 3 in the morning every night, like, there's no way that I would be able to stay clean. So,
Yeah, I mean that. Yeah, the access to, I mean, and just sort of the acceptance of alcohol as a thing that everyone does, or the way things are marketed in this country is like a whole thing that I can get angry about or upset about. But I also, yeah, it's a really good point that, like, well, I'm glad there's not heroin shops, on the corner. But also, it's like really cool that, like, yeah, like that's something to put on the wall, to be like, it's been 3.5 years for this, it's been this for this, and it, like, to separate them out is, I think, sounds like it's being kind to yourself, which is awesome. Like, and
mhm.
also like that it isn't a black and white thing either. It's like each one is a hurdle that you're sort of doing. They're kind of separate. um
Yeah. Yeah, I have like a tracker in my phone. It's like a sobriety app, and I have a separate tracker for like each substance, but then I have the one that's like the the general,
the
like,
mother. Yeah.
yes. Yeah,
But
exactly.
what's the app called?
Let me look. It's called like Sober something, Sober Time.
Sober Time. I like that.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, like, you kind of mentioned that you didn't really like when you started this, it was to just take, the needles out, and keep going with the other substances. But I sort of wanted to know, when, I guess, sort of toward the end, when you're like, okay, all of this is gone, when you became sober, did you have an expectation of how this journey would go? Like, did you sort of, did you have like an idea of what this journey would be?
Um, it's hard to say because, like I said, yeah, at the beginning it was just like I just want to stop doing heroin and using needle drugs, and so like it kind of evolved over time where like, um so the first time I went to rehab, I didn't take it seriously at all, and I, like, smoked weed in the rehab. The second time I went to rehab, it was like that was when I realized that, like, "Oh, shit." Like, I'm, like, an like a true, like, I have, like, an issue with everything, and like, even alcohol, and it, like, blew my mind to, like, examine my relationship um with all these other substances that I had never stopped to think about, like, and not just substances, but my behaviors. So I was like, oh shit, now I'm gonna have to do like a whole overhaul. So I had to re-examine my relationship to like everything in my life and my behaviors and what was serving me and what wasn't. And then that was kind of overwhelming because I was like, I don't even know, like, this is just a lot of work. But I thought, I would do therapy and I would, start going to meetings and so I started taking it more seriously, but I think the overwhelming sense of like I have to change everything and like re-examine everything I thought I knew. It was just like it was a lot. And so I actually did end up relapsing in my second rehab as well. It was
Mm.
I was there for almost 3 months, I think a little over 2 months. And 1 month in, I like relapsed while I was, it was like after a month, you get like day passes or whatever. So as soon as I got a day pass, I went out and used, and it was a whole thing. So it was just like, I think like, I started to visualize what my life could look like, but I still, throughout all the years, I've still kind of always had this, like some reservations, or I've always just been kind of biding my time where it's like there was like a moment where I thought I saw a path to a sober life and like all the things that my future could hold for me. And then when I relapsed in that second rehab, it kind of like started this narrative in my head of like, I can't do this. Like, there's no way I can stay sober forever. So let me just get back
Mm.
on track, get like, be able to hold down a job, get an apartment, and then
Mm.
I'll go back to like just drinking or just smoking weed. So it took a long time for me to come back to a point like where I'm at now where like I actually do want to be sober. um I went back and forth for a very long time. So it's hard to say, like there's not like one clear picture of what I ever thought it would look like. It's just kind of like been trial and error, like, well, maybe if I do it this way. And most of the time, like the ways that I'm trying is like I'm trying to find a loophole so that I can still use something, without having to give up everything, but still have like a stable life. and and it just doesn't work for me. Like, it might work for a time. I was California sober for and like I want to say like uh 2 or 3 years. Like, it was like after I quit drinking, I was just smoking weed and taking edibles for a while. And
Okay, that was what I was gonna clarify because I assumed that's what that meant. But
yeah.
but also,
And so when I did that, I did get a glimpse of like what a stable life could look like. But at the end of the day, it was like I kept slipping, I kept relapsing. Like every
mm,
few months or like 6 months to a year, I would just relapse on harder shit. Um so yeah, so now I'm back to the point of like, okay, I need to do this for real. And I don't really know, like I have a clearer picture of what I want, things that I want for my future. Like I want to pursue, my career as like a camera assistant, and I want to pursue stand-up comedy more, and I would like to eventually get my own place, like have my own apartment in Chicago. So I'm currently living with a friend, but and I have all these like pictures in my head of like kind of things that I want, and I know that I can only have them if I'm able to like stay fully sober.
I mean, God, you've done a lot of work, and it's really like cool to hear. And also, thank you for like being detailed in it because I think it really helps the picture for me, learning about you and the story. And I think it makes so much sense to like in a vacuum, like the idea of being sober, like it's almost like I should be doing it, right? It's kind of starts like that. Like I know this is good for me, or like this is a healthy thing, or whatever. It's better than the alternative. But if you don't have those, like what you're saying, the ambitions, the goals, the dreams, I think it does make it easier, right? Probably to like go back on it because it's like yeah, it seems like that is a huge piece of the puzzle is to sort of where am I heading, rather
Hmm.
than I think a lot of us. I mean, I do this all the time where I have days go by. I'm like, wait, slow down. Where am I headed? What am I trying to do here? And so yeah, it sounds like that was kind of that was I mean, years in the making of like figuring that out, right?
Yeah, yeah, definitely. And just coming to realize too that like a huge part of the problem is like not wanting to be present in my own life. Like how do I re-engage in my own life and like
Mm,
foster connections with people, like meaningful connections with people, and like find things that bring me joy, that whether it's, yeah, I need social interaction, but I also need to find joy in like the boring moments at home alone, know, which I don't know if that sounds cliche or not, but like
no,
because I can't be happy like 100% of the time. That's just never going to happen. Like
no
there's
one
going to be,
is. Yeah.
yeah, there's going to be rough moments. There's going to be like bad things that happen. There's going to be boring moments. But like what I need to learn is how to cope with those. And that was like the missing piece, was like I didn't know how to cope with anything. I didn't know how to cope with being bored. I didn't know how to cope with being sad. Like I had kind of tailored my um experience based on like, so like if I was feeling down and I needed to cry it out, I couldn't just like let myself cry. I had to drink and
Mm,
alone in my apartment alone and then cry it out. If I wanted to be like social and have friends around, then I would go out and drink. And if I wanted to feel euphoric, I would take like Molly or something. If I wanted to numb all of the emotions out, then I would use heroin. So it was like I had an answer to everything to kind of like control how I was feeling. And so now without those substances, it's just kind of trying to figure out how to regulate my own emotions and like actually feel them and move through them and cope with them.
like, I mean, like you said, you didn't have coping mechanisms, but I mean, I guess you kind of did in a way. The coping mechanisms were the substances,
Yeah.
and I recognize that too. Like I mentioned to you on the phone, and I'm just sort of like including myself in this, not to like compare, but also to just sort of say that I think we all do this. Like to be like, I think we all have substance abuse issues, whether it's I don't know what the levels are or comparing, but like the idea that like when I feel anxiety, like there are like five options a lot of times, and most of the time it's I don't respond by like sitting in it and feeling what it is and analyzing what it is. Instead I go eat something, I have an edible, or I mean exercise is the healthy option, get out of the house, move around. But that's like normally when I'm in those moments, I don't want to do that. I don't want to do the healthy right thing, or even
Right.
lay down and think. Just sort of stop. When I'm in, but I also do chores is something that I do, and I guess that's the healthiest thing of besides feeling the emotions. Even though normally when I do that, I'm like very angry and resentful. Like I'm like, why isn't Lily doing the dishes right now? Like, even though it has nothing to do with like whatever. But I just like that's how I get the angst out. Like I don't know what to do with myself, so I just keep moving.
Hmm.
Um, so I like what I'm saying is I feel like I have similar tendencies. I know you're going to meetings regularly, and are you still in therapy as well?
I actually, I'm trying to find a new therapist, and it's been really hard. There, like everybody has a waiting list, unless, and this happened to me when I was looking for the last time I had to switch therapists. Um, I was looking for someone that specialized in addictions counseling and
Hmm.
and trauma. And I also, on top of that, was looking for someone who was EMDR certified. And it's just so hard to find. Like it was like I was just being put on waiting lists. So I was like, you know what, I need someone. Like so I found a therapist that still had like a background with like depression and anxiety, but didn't necessarily specialize in like addiction or trauma. And she was really great. And I was with her for I think a couple years. But then I've been in and out of rehab for the past like a little over a year. I want to say a year and a few months. Um, and so when you're in rehab, there's typically like a therapist there that's assigned to you. And so like usually insurance won't, I mean, when you're like in like an inpatient rehab facility, you're in the inpatient. So I couldn't see my therapist even if I wanted to. But then, I was doing intensive outpatient when I would get out of the rehab. So it was like another treatment program
Mm.
where I would go there. I would go to the hospital like all day during the day, but then I would get to go home at night. And they have therapists assigned there too. So I couldn't, like, my insurance wouldn't let me like double dip, so to speak, of like having. So I didn't see my therapist for a very long time. And she no longer has the availability. So it's like one of those situations where like it kind of sucks because like I was getting the help that I needed, but now, that kind of it didn't backfire. Obviously, it was like something I needed, but like that catch of like, well, I can't see my outside individual therapist while I also have this like other therapist assigned to me. Um, yeah, led to me losing my therapist. So now I'm on the hunt again, and it's like it's the same thing. It's just like waiting list after
Mm.
waiting list. So I'm hoping, you know, I can find someone that at least specializes in either addiction or trauma. Like at this point, I'm just like, I'll take one or the other. Like I'll take either or. Um, but yeah, it's hard, which I mean, I guess maybe it's like a sign that more people are going to therapy. So there's like less availability. So that's like the silver lining. But like, yeah, it's been rough. I'm just like out here like raw dogging life and it is so difficult.
I agree. Yeah, it's one of those things like once you start therapy, it's like, oh, why would I want to not have this?
Yeah.
But it is the hardest thing to like go through the bureaucracy of it. And I mean, even having insurance to begin with that will cover any of that, or like the various different rules and types of like therapy you can. It's enough to like, I mean, I've had the experience with Lily where it's like after doing that, we needed a drink. It's like, oh, like that's not like it's like
Yeah.
this is so hard, and it shouldn't be. But also, yeah, I think that is a good silver lining. But I wonder if it's also just that the system is so hard that it like, well, I mean, clearly there's not just like a potpourri of therapies that are therapists that are just available, for people. But I think it's also that it's just so hard to find that connection. And even when you're there, when you've made it, you don't even know if you're going to vibe with that person. So it's like a whole nother thing. But
Right.
I was going to ask you. You mentioned EMDR. I just wanted to follow up on what that meant.
It's like an eye movement desensitization. I forget what the R stands for, but it's like I don't know exactly how it works, but I've heard from a lot of people that I personally know have tried it. Like some people, it didn't do anything for, but the majority of people I know who have tried it, like it really helped them. So I have like multiple sources of trauma that like I've just never, even when I was in therapy, like I kind of it was on me that like I mean it takes time to work up to talking about those kinds of things. But, after like being with the same therapist for a couple years, I was still kind of keeping things pretty surface level. So like I
Mm.
didn't do as much work as I could have into like delving into those root problems or like the trauma and all of that. And even when we would talk about it, it's just like it didn't seem to really help that much. So I don't know if it's just like something where I need to try again because I wasn't like as open or forthcoming about my trauma when I had the opportunity, or if it is something where like just talking it out just isn't going to do anything for me and I need to try EMDR. Yeah, it's something that like is I've come to realize is a lot harder to find. Not a lot of people have the certification to do it. And also, for a while it was kind of off the table because COVID happened, and it's
Mhm.
something that like you do in person. So it just, when I started looking for it, it was like, oh, it was fine being on the waiting list because it was like, well, it's not something I'm, even if I had the option, I didn't feel comfortable going in person at that time anyways. So now that it's like on the table again, I'm hoping that like these waiting lists don't take super long. But yeah, I'm gonna try to find someone else in the meantime. It's just like, making those phone calls is hard, and it becomes a catch-22 where like my mental health starts suffering more because I don't have, I'm not going to therapy, and I'm not, taking care of the things I need to take care of. And then as my mental health suffers, it makes it harder to make those phone calls and take care of those things. So it's kind of like this like cycle.
Right. And because it's so frustrating and it almost sort of feels, well, you're just a waiting list. It's in the name. Like there's no time frame, there's no who knows how long that is. Or like it's sort of this in between area, which is, I mean, I don't know about you, but that's like an anxious place for me to be. And
Yeah.
the not knowing.
Hmm.
I was gonna ask you, maybe you already used it, but like what is like your preferred term, or is there a preferred term for like, I guess, a relapse? Is it relapse, or like, because I'm like, fall off the wagon sounds like way too old, and like I don't like using it, and I don't know, maybe even, I don't know, even relapse sounds kind of harsh and clinical. Like, do you have a term that you
I
like?
usually use the word relapse,
Okay.
although like sometimes like there have been times where I used for like a day, and I think I'll usually refer to that as like I slipped up.
Hmm.
But I still can, I mean, I think I do still consider it a relapse. I just like, I think in an attempt to be kinder to myself, it's like, oh, I slipped up. you know.
It's a mini one. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, that
Yeah.
makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah, usually when I do relapse, or when I do use again, like what after a period of sobriety, it's like rarely ever, like I could count on one hand the number of times it was like a day or a weekend. It's like it's always like, oh, I'm back in it for like 6 months or like several years.
Oh, whoa, okay, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I feel like, was this latest one a slip then in your mind? Like, or
It
was
was
it?
kind of like a no, it was like a full on relapse because I initially relapsed in, I had like 4 months sober, and then I relapsed in what was that, August? Yeah, I think it was August. I used for like almost 2 weeks straight, and then I was living in a halfway house at the time, and my friend that I'm staying with now, he just knows me very well. We've known each other almost 15 years, and so he had been like checking in with me about like, are you okay? Is everything okay? Something seems off. And I kept just saying like, no, I'm fine. I'm fine. I've just been
Mm,
busy or whatever. And then, he finally just like straight up confronted me, was like, did you relapse? And I still denied it. And he just kept pressing, because he was like, no, something's not right. Like I can tell. And so I finally just like broke down crying and told him everything that was going on. And he convinced me to come clean about it. And I was like, no, like if I come clean, I'm gonna get kicked out of the halfway house. And he was like, you need to just, you can come stay with me if that happens, like, but we have to like address this. You can't just do this on your own. um and so I left the halfway house. I moved back to Humboldt Park, and I during like the first month that I was here, I just kept slipping up. Like
mhm.
I would use for like 3 days and then not for one, and then I would use, again for like, so it was that, I think it was like a month and a half pretty much that I was like, I might get like a few days here and there, but it was like a full on relapse. Where like, I mean, it ended pretty bad. Like I couldn't stop. I could not stop. And I wanted to. I got to the point where I was just like, um, I wanted to be able to stop, or like ask for help so badly, and I just like it's just that feeling of powerlessness is so intense, when I'm in it. It's just like it's so visible to me how powerless I am, but there's like nothing, like I just feel like there's nothing I can do about it.
Well, first, thank you for sharing that. I know, like, um, I mean, it's just hard to talk about. I appreciate it. And I just want to like a commend your friend, and that's like such a cool friend, and also that like it's sort of you can't do it alone, right? None of us can, and like I think in some ways it's about finding the right community. But I was gonna ask you, like, well, oh, like those moments, like you're saying, where it's just so hopeless, and it's like in this moment where you are clean and obviously like in a place where you're willing to talk to me about it, like it probably does it feel that hopelessness, that how foreign does that feel, or how close does that feel? Does that make sense? Like,
Yeah. Well, this time it actually it's weird because it isn't always the same. Like I'm trying to think back to like the second time I went to rehab, it was miserable, and every day it was like every thought that I had, every second, like every passing second that I was awake, all I could think about was wanting to use. It was
mm,
like this overwhelming pull to go back, and even when I got to the point where I was like, no, but I don't want to, and I want to be like sober, it was just like it like permeated my thoughts like the entire day, throughout the day. And it went on like that the entire time I was there, which I think I said was a little over 2 months. And even like the last period of sobriety that I had, I said I had almost 4 months, and it was still like I was just I wasn't thinking about it all day throughout the day, but I have this like tendency to kind of like build this like self-fulfilling prophecy of like, oh, I'm doomed to relapse. I can't do this. The evidence has shown I've been trying to get sober for 8 years and I keep going back to it. I cannot like stay away from it. Um, so I kind of get to this point where like they call it decision fatigue, where like you're like you're making the decision not to use over and over throughout the day, like from the moment I wake up to the moment I go to sleep. And so after a while, yeah, for a lot of people it does get easier, but like for me, um, for a lot of people it gets easier after like a month or a couple months, but for a lot of people it's like it could be like a year before those cravings
mm.
go down. It's just like it varies from person to person. And so for me, I'm one of those people where like that craving is just constantly there. But this time around, it's is weird. I was just telling my roommate last night. I was like, you know what? I think I've had like a couple of days over the past week where I didn't think about using, because I have a lot of like track marks all over my body. So I'll see that, if I'm doing something with my hands or whatever, or like when I'm in the shower, like I see them. So like I am aware of like the act of using, but like the desire to use was not there. Like I didn't have the thought like I want to go use. And I had a couple of days like that in the past week. And that is like unheard of for me in the first month, to have even one day where I didn't think about using. It's
Wow.
like it blows my mind. I'm like, this has never happened before. Like usually it's like month 4 and I'm still like pulling my hair out, just like when is this gonna end? When is this obsession gonna like finally die down? And so I'm not saying that it's like it's over and I'm cured, like no. um but just the fact that like I realized that I had even one full day where I didn't want to use was just like it was huge.
That is huge. That's amazing. I think that's worthy of celebration and congratulations. So,
Thanks.
and also I think that's just that you're aware of that too. Like you have to be so in your body and in yourself to even sort of, well, to recognize these differences and to sort of like I don't know. I think I just say it's you're being present, I think. And that's like what you were saying you struggle with. And that's like
Hmm.
that's awesome. Well, I guess I wanted to mention, I mean, that like, I mean, obviously this is so hard. And I think there's this, hopefully now, and I don't think I need to say this to you, but I think there is still is like obviously stigma with mental health in general, but stigma with addiction and the idea that there's something wrong with you or weak about you for relapsing. And that even though the whole point of those substances, I mean, not the whole point, but you know what I mean? They are built to be addicted. They are so addictive that they're very good at their job, like better than we will be at any of our jobs in our lifetime. So it's like, I just want to like say that and that it's like it's really hard to do what you're doing, and also that like I hope people listening don't like it's not like this decision to be sober. It's a decision you have to make every fucking day or hour, right?
Hmm.
And so I totally understand the decision fatigue and like what you were saying about the self-fulfilling prophecy, but it's almost like it's become so hard. It's like, well, it's easier just to like to just get to the end of that, like what you're saying, like I know it's going to happen anyway, and then you do it, and then the pattern continues or whatever, so at least like you don't have to do that no 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 every day, but like
Right.
I mean it's kind of sounds like in some ways it's like practice, or it's like building up an anti-tolerance, right? Like now, like what you're saying is your body's like, oh, there isn't a craving, or I don't have it, and that's really cool to like, I don't know, getting to know new Monica, new
Hmm.
I don't know. Um I'm just like I feel like slightly emotional just like hearing you talk about it, and thank you. Um
Yeah, of course. Yeah, it was emotional to like recognize that, you know. And then the the crazy part is like because I remember it was the last day where that I like fully aware that I had no, craving to use. It was Sunday. I had such a good day Sunday. And then Monday was like a terrible day. It was just like the worst day. And it was like, it was just like a way to keep me in check, like keep me on my toes of like, yeah, you're gonna have some really good days where you don't feel like using it. And then the very next day you're gonna want to run out the door and do nothing but use. So it's
mm,
like it was like a very humbling experience. But I was able to get through Monday without using, like it was like, okay, I can do this. Like I can do this. And that was something that I started to recognize in my body this last period of sobriety. It was like this whole experience. I went on this whitewater rafting trip and it was just um I was very excited for it. I had been planning for it for like months, there's a whole like backstory to like these things that happened that like I almost didn't go on the trip. And then, because I have codependency issues and one of my friends relapsed like really hard the day before, and I was like, I need to stay home. I need to stay in the city this weekend and I need to stay with my friend and not go on the trip. And then I realized like I can't, I can be there for my friend. I can suggest things. I like convinced my friend to call their sponsor and like spend the weekend with their sponsor. And I was like, that's the best I can do. Like, I'm not equipped. I mean, for all I know, I could go there and this person could keep drinking and I'll be like, fuck it. You know what? Like, I want to drink now too. Or I'm going to go pick up my substance of choice and get fucked up too. It's like, I can't put myself in a situation. So anyways, I went on the trip, which was like huge for me to like put my sobriety first, right? And then my friend that I went on the trip with, I find out after we're already there that she doesn't want to do the whitewater rafting portion. It was like a camping whitewater rafting,
yeah,
like there was like a bunch of stuff going on,
right.
um, tubing and stuff. And so she just didn't want to do the whitewater rafting portion. So I was like, okay, well, I guess I'll go alone and I'll make friends, like on, I thought it was going to be one of those like round rafts,
Right.
with like a group of people, and then I find out it's one person per raft. So, anyways, long story short, like I almost bailed, but I didn't. And during the actual like whitewater rafting thing, I was like ready to give up and ask for someone to like tow me back to the campsite because like my arms were like limp noodles. And then like I just started to hear this voice in my head that was like, no, you can do this, like you can do it, and like you are capable. And it was like the first time that I can remember, like one of the few times that I can remember like hearing a voice like that in my head. Because usually the voice in my head is trying to like discourage me and tear me down and like tell me I can't do it. And so it was, it was like, it was it felt like I could kind of like take that feeling and hang on to it and apply it to like so many other things that were going on in my life at the time, including sobriety. And so like, yeah, I ended up relapsing, but that's okay. Like I to be able to have felt that feeling of like I am capable, and to be able to like tell that, hear myself, telling that to myself was huge, and it made me super emotional. So like every step that I get closer to like believing that like I am capable of doing the hard thing, the difficult thing, it makes me feel so much more empowered.
Yeah, and that it's coming from yourself. Like that means the most. Then I mean, yes. And I'm going to say this: you are capable. But like if I say it, that maybe I don't know if you're like me, someone giving me a compliment doesn't always. I'm working on keeping those and believing them, right? But like the voice inside, like that's amazing that you're cultivating that voice. And like I was thinking of it when you were saying it, like the whitewater rafting is like such a metaphor for, well, life in general, but specifically for this sobriety journey. Like there's always rapids around the corner, or you don't even know what's going to be around the corner, right?
Right.
It's like the Monday that you were talking about. Like you're smooth sailing on Sunday, and then
Yeah.
Monday it's like, oh shit, it's like the homeward bound like waterfall like is happening, and you gotta survive that. But like that's, I mean, and that you even got like there was so many steps just to get in the boat too.
Hmm.
It wasn't even just like there was like a whole act one or two, and then so like yeah, you had like three movies in that.
Yeah.
So like, that's really awesome that you did that. Especially, I understand the codependency thing too. Like in some ways that uh it definitely can feel like it's sort of a reason to bail or excuse or put yourself second, right?
Right.
And that was the whole time. They were all like these tests that were happening, and you put yourself first. So that's like, I mean, I think that is it's easier said than done, but like almost for anything that we're facing, like that in some way feels like like I don't know, step 1 through 7 is like put yourself first. You know, I feel like we could talk for a long time about this because I mean, you're nice to talk to and like full of just I was gonna say good stuff, but that doesn't sound right. Like it's just like, well, it's just like we're working through these things and you're working through them right now, which is why it feels like, primal. But I feel like the white rotter rafting, like in some ways, is where I want to like. I think that's the ending, right? Like
Okay.
you're returning. We both went out on this. We were maybe in the raft together this time, and now we're back on land. And I want to apologize again for the beginning where I messed up your pronouns. Like I tried not to think about that the entire time, of like being, oh, I'm such a failure, I'm such an asshole. But I think it wouldn't be me without bringing it back up and at least reiterating, like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean anything by it.
Oh, no,
Um,
you're totally cool.
but I think it's important to, own that too. I mean, my instinct was to, yeah, I think cut it out. You mentioned like sort of early on, it's like the last question, like
Okay.
that it's hard to be in the dull moments or the sort of just the day to day, whether it's boring or just not, up and down big stuff. And I was just sort of wondering, what are the small things that are bringing you joy right now? Like, what are the things that you're enjoying?
So I actually went and I used to play music when I was a kid. I played piano and clarinet, and I was pretty decent. Like I was pretty good for like a kid. And
Yeah.
I quit like in high school, and so I don't remember like how to play at all. I don't remember how to read sheet music. I don't remember how to do anything. But I went and dug out my Casio keyboard from my parents' house,
Ah,
and I brought it here to the apartment. So I've been I haven't done it in a little while, but I started like taking, what do you call it? Like looking up YouTube lessons and like trying to relearn how to play piano. So that's been nice. I've actually like I didn't watch TV barely at all for like the past like year and some change because, I spent a lot of it in inpatient rehabs, and then when I wasn't in inpatient rehab, I was like doing outpatient or like on my days off. I just didn't have the attention span, and I was too restless to like sit with myself. So now I am at a point where like that restlessness has like eased up a lot, and my attention span is like kind of like going back to what it used to be. And so
mhm.
I'm catching up on shows, which I know sounds like, I mean, it's such like a mundane thing, like, oh, watching TV, but it's like, no, I haven't gotten to enjoy TV. Like I've tried to watch TV and it just like I just can't do it. And so like I'm catching up on shows, so that's been nice.
Monica, thank you so much for doing this and joining me on the
Yeah.
show.
Yeah, thanks for
Um,
having me.
of course. I'm so grateful to Monica Andrade for joining me and trusting me, and to you all for listening to our conversation. I've definitely been in a place of feeling powerless, and I'm taking Monica's words to heart. I am capable. I can do this. You can do this. We can do this. You can find Monica's mixtape and all others on the Naked Man Spotify page or in this episode's description. Please rate and subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram at NakedManPod, and don't hesitate to reach out to us at nakedmanpod@gmail.com. If you have any thoughts and feelings you'd like to share, like about your coping mechanisms, call and leave a message at the Naked Man phone line at 747 231 7120. If you're out there scared and struggling with sobriety, please know you're not alone and you matter. Call the SAM HSA National Helpline at 1 800 662 4357. Next time on the Naked Man podcast, I talk to Priyanka Vashi, a friend and spirit guide. In the meantime, as my dad always says, be sweet. This episode of the Naked Man podcast was conceived by Andy Green in collaboration with Monica Andrade. The Naked Man is a podcast created and produced and hosted by me, Andy Green. All music was composed by Robert Panico, and graphics were created by Christopher Miles.